37th parallel on America's haunted highway. It's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange. America's haunted highway. It's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange. It's Pixelated Paranormal.
Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to Pixelated Paranormal. I am so sorry we were starting late. My computer decided it wasn't going to update Discord. So my apologies. I swear to the god and all the gods that one day we'll fucking start on time. And with me as always is Preston. How's that for an intro? Man, I'm pissed.
Hey, what's up, all you cool ghosts and goblins, you crocodines and crocodingos, you witchers and witches, and you fucking people that know how to look at a watch and get where you're going. That's apparently not us, because we're a day late and $1 short. I'm Preston.
My apologies.
Turn your fucking volume down, you fucking amateur.
No, I'm making sure the audio is actually streaming this time. I'm a little gun shy and
Yep.
Cool. Well, let's not waste any time. Did you bring any news to the table? Because I did not.
No, fuck no, I didn't. Daddy's not prepared. I was outside shoveling dirt for Mom, you know.
Uh-huh. Planting a garden, huh?
Planting a garden.
Nice, dude. Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
With my fucking half a limp wrist and I got it, Mom. Don't worry. I got the wheelbarrow.
Yeah, look at you. You're doing it. You're not letting your disability set you back.
Yeah.
Poor fella. Well,
Poor
it's okay.
fella.
We don't really need any news because I think this story is going to be a very, very long one. Presto, do you have the doc open? Because you've got quite a bit of speaking parts on this one.
Ugh. Hold on.
Yep, that means you're going to have to keep up, pal.
Where do I get searching docs shared with me? Booyah! There we go. Episode 276.
So if this were to be a research paper, it would be a 13-page paper. This story is very long and very bizarre, and just like I promised, it was going to be a follow-up to last week's episode about the Elk Abduction. So don't you worry, folks, we've got elk aplenty in this bizarre story. Preston, you ever heard the one about the alien abduction of Carl Higdon?
Nope.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Yep, I can do that. Are you streaming now? Live? Okay. Huh, that's weird, man. I mean, if you think it's something to do with YouTube tonight, we could try to redo it tomorrow night. Not now, you're not.
No, I think
Okay.
it's good. I think the stream quality on the bottom was low, and now it's like in the 10,000s, 11,000. So I think it's fine. I think we're solid
Okay, cool.
because I don't see the little ghosties glitching out on YouTube. Carry on.
Oh, okay, cool.
Good sir. Carry on.
Well, I'm gonna start the story over then. That way we can just restart it. Stop your audio recording if you would, and start that back up. Let me know when you're recording.
Whole new audio or just
Yeah, just whole news fine.
Okay. Recording.
Ooh, let's do the old 3, 2, 1 pop.
Pop.
And then can you when is this the same stream? Is it continuation? Or
Yeah,
is
it
it a
just
whole
keeps
new
going.
stream?
Nope,
Oh, it
keeps
does.
going.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
only thing
damn.
that
Is there any way
sucks.
to trim that off or edit that
No.
video and cut the first bit off? Really?
No. Yeah, people just watch
Huh.
how the sausage is made, so they get to see us talk back and forth. Like, what the fuck are these morons doing? Like,
Okay,
whoops,
I gotcha. I gotcha.
whoopsie
Well,
nuggets.
can you flash this up for a second? I sent you a picture.
No, because you didn't send it to my email, and I don't have it downloaded.
You're killing me.
Yeah,
Just
you
kidding.
gotta
Just
do
kidding,
that ahead of
baby.
time, dog.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, well, let's get into it. At least the audio will be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so tonight's story takes place on the ill-fated night of October 25th, 1974. Now, let's take you back a little bit here. If you flipped on the radio cruising down the highway, you might hear the Steve Miller Band's The Joker, possibly Ray Stevens' The Streak, or the smooth,
Oh
seductive
yeah, they
voice
call
of
me
Barry
the
White.
streak. Do that, do that, do that, do
Look
that.
at it, look at it. You got it,
Yeah,
baby, yeah.
yeah.
Or
I'm a
perhaps
joker.
Barry White's
I'm a
smooth...
toker. I'm a midnight joker.
Part of the lyrics were correct there. Yeah, guys,
Yeah.
copyright laws. We can no longer sample music.
So you're gonna hear me
Or
butcher
Barry
everything in my
White's...
bad karaoke voice.
Right. Or Barry White's or the smooth, seductive voice of Barry White singing, I can't get enough of your love, babe. Or presto, if you were taking your sweetie to the cinema, you were probably going to see The Mask of Zorro, It's Alive, The Taking of
The
Pelham
fuck I
123,
was.
or
That ain't up my
or the
alley.
infamous Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
There we go, baby.
But the main player of our story tonight, though, wasn't worried about the movies on October 25th, 1974. No, he was worrying about how to feed his family. Carl Higdon was a hard-working man, 41 years old, a husband and a father of 4, who worked for the better part of 20 years at the A.M. Wells Service Company as an oil driller. And after years of busting his hump, he was now a foreman as well as an oil well driller. But like most folks back in the 1970s, Carl and his family were hit hard by the current recession. Food prices crept up, gas prices climbed to new heights, and meanwhile, wages for the working men and women stayed frozen in their tracks. It kind of sounds like the bullshit we're dealing with right now, Presto.
Hell
But anyway,
yeah.
on that day in October of 74, it started for Carl like most others. He got up, grabbed a quick shower, packed up a hasty lunch, and was just getting ready to head out to his second shift job at A.M. Wells Service Company in Riverton, Wyoming, when his phone rang. The foreman answered the call, and it was Carl's job to take sick calls for his crew, being the foreman. And that's just exactly what happened.
Well, one of my key men phoned to tell me that he was sicker than a dog.
So after hanging up the phone, Carl thought about it for a bit and then decided, without his crew being full, there wasn't anything he could do, or really accomplish anything on the job site for that matter, so he called off work for his shift and decided to take the full day off. Now, since he knew he wouldn't be making any money that day and still wanted to be able to provide for his family, Higdon decided to utilize his unexpected free afternoon to go elk hunting. If he could manage to bag a big enough elk, he could process it, pack it, and stick it in the freezer, and their family would be more than set for months without having to spend a dime on any meat, thus helping them get through that harsh Wyoming winter that was looming just around the corner. So with this plan in place, the oil man packed up his gear into his company truck and headed towards McCarthy Canyon in nearby Carbon County. On his way to McCarthy Canyon, Higdon passed a pair of stranded motorists who were pulled over on the highway working on their van. Being the good Samaritan that he was, he pulled over and helped them repair their vehicle. During their conversation, Higdon told the two motorists that he planned to go elk hunting for the day. And then his luck seemingly changed, because the two folks that he had just helped revealed that they had been avid hunters themselves, and they had a honeypot of a place that was where there was much more wild game roaming around than Higdon was currently headed for.
They were fucking
Higdon
aliens.
Anytime
somebody's like, hey buddy, I got a honey pot, I'm gonna tell you this is where the best fucking elk, this is the best fucking fish you can find south of the Muddy Delta. Like, there's something nefarious going on, right? They're aliens, they're fucking druggies, they're gonna take you for your money, because ain't nobody sharing the honey spots. Like,
you don't think so, man?
No. That goes against the hunter creed. You keep them honey spots to yourself. Unless it's your buddy, you and your buddy Jerry, and you're like, hey Jerry, you want to come over this weekend? I can guarantee we're gonna get ourselves some elk, buddy. You bring the Bud Light, and I bring the ammunition. You know what I'm saying? then it's kosher. But if you're just some stranger, fuck no, dude. You don't tell them where that shit's at. This is like fucking Men in Black in disguise. I bet they were like in a fucking black hunting gear, you know, with they look like the guy off King of the Hill with their little glasses. You can't see their eyeballs, and they're like, "Excuse me, Carl, we know where the honey spot is. It's in the woods. Please follow us. You will get elk. Don't tell anybody."
Right.
This is our black Chevy Blazer. It's supposed to be a Cadillac, but redneck style. All right, continue. I'm sorry.
Shit,
I digress.
No, all good, man. Just checking in here on YouTube. Seems to be working pretty well now. So, well, Higdon would go on to describe the encounter with the two stranded motorists. That's your part, buddy.
Oh shit! Sorry. I was still up a page. I got on my rant and I lost my track. You know, whatever. Anyways, I pulled in front of them and helped them. And during our chat, they told me the hunting was much better further back in the remote section of the Medicine Bowl National Forest. And I'm like, fuck yeah, gonna get me some.
Nothing suspicious going on here.
Yeah.
Well, Higdon thanked his fellow hunters for the hot tip and changed his destination to Medicine Bow National Forest, and began driving towards the park's northern region, which is located about 40 miles south of his home back in Rawlings. Higdon arrived at the park late in the afternoon, just before 4 p.m. And once he arrived, he was actually surprised because he happened to run into his old buddy Gary.
Shit, Gary. Well, around 4 o'clock, I parked my two-wheel drive on the knoll and pulled out my thermos to pour a cup of coffee. I like my coffee black, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, an old friend, Gary Eaton, walked over to where I had stopped, and together we surveyed the area. We got out our binoculars, and we were just panning around and looking. Anyways, after a few minutes, Gary told me he was going on higher into the forest, and jokingly, he suggested that he might scare down some elk for me. What a fucking pal, Jerry.
So Higdon and his old pal Gary split up, and Carl unpacked his brand new Magnum rifle, loaded it with some big old 7mm bullets, because
Pow
Carl
chow, motherfuckers.
Fucking business. Right, yippee-ki-yay. And thus he set off farther into the forest, where he was hoping to bag that prize-winning, freezer-stuffing elk. But not long after he began to walk around the forest area, he noticed out of the corner of his eye a sudden flash of movement. So he ducked down and made his way through the brush and the bramble, and once he cleared his way through some of the overgrown thicket, through the clearing just ahead of him, the hunter struck pay dirt. He stumbled upon a small herd of about 5 elk. Quietly, making sure not to make one solitary sound, Carl raised up his new rifle, put his eye to the sight, and took a small breath, and then took aim at the largest male in the pack.
Shoot, I walked about maybe 5 minutes till I came to a rise in the ground, and then down below in the clearing were 5 elk, huddled together closely. From my vantage point, though, several hundred yards away, I could see that one of them was a really outstanding animal. He was a specimen of beauty. I lined him up in my telescope, sighted him in, and I fired my gun. A Magnum rifle. Hell yeah. Now, it can give you your shoulder a mean whack if you're not careful, if you know what I'm saying. Kapow, ka-chow, motherfucker.
But as soon as Carl pulled the trigger, something peculiar happened, contrary to what he's expecting. There was a small flash of the rifle's muzzle, but bizarrely there was no kickback. And even more perplexing was that when the gun fired, it was absolutely silent. In fact, all the sounds of the great outdoors were completely muted. The trees made no noise, even though the leaves were blowing in the wind. The birds had stopped chirping. The insects had stopped making all their normal noises. And oddly still, the air around him suddenly felt like it was now electric. It was like that Oz effect we hear all the time when those kind of things happen when, aliens are around or something truly paranormal happens. Everything just goes dead quiet. But something else happened at the same time as the gun had gone off. In its strange silence, Higdon claimed that he was actually able to watch the bullet leave the barrel of the rifle and slowly drift off towards the unsuspecting elk. Like it was traveling in slow motion, Carl watched the bullet lazily drift for about 50 feet before it finally fell to the ground.
Holy shit! I couldn't believe my senses. Instead of a powerful blast, a 7mm bolt left the gun like a butterfly in slow motion. It floated, finally falling to the ground about 50 feet from where I stood. I was awestruck. I froze, ain't gonna lie. All around me there was a powerful silence. Not a chirping bird, not a rustling leaf. Nothing could be heard. The only sensation I could detect was a tingling in my crotch, and it crawled up my spine. There was a similar feeling that you often get before a fierce thunderstorm when the air is full of static electricity.
Higdon walked over and picked up the bullet off the ground and inspected it closely. The lead portion of the 7mm had disappeared, and only the oddly misshapen case remained. He placed the bullet into his pocket, and then he noticed that the eerie silence surrounding him suddenly was broken, as the sound of a twig snapping echoed behind him. He spun around just in time to see a figure stepping out of the clearing of the tree line.
Dude, fuck that. I don't think I just would have picked the bullet casing up and put it in my pocket. I would have been like, dude, this is fucking weird. I want to fucking reload this. Chank, chank, let's go! And then, what do you know? Something's coming out of the forest, and you're not prepared.
Yeah.
Carl. Jesus.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, turning to my left, I saw a man standing there, and at first, I thought he was just another hunter, so I lowered my gun. Then he moved out of the shadows and into the light, and I immediately realized something was terribly wrong. My heart skipped a beat, and my knees became like noodles, and I was shaking so badly I could hardly stand. I thought, hell, I should have had stayed in McCarthy Canyon like I originally planned. Goddamn hitchhikers and my best friend Gary dragging me up here in this hellhole, son of a bitch.
Right. Standing before Carl was what appeared to be a humanoid being, wearing a black, skin-tight, one-piece outfit.
It was like some weird wetsuit scuba diving son of a bitch in front of me.
Across his shoulders draped a pair of harness-like straps that crisscrossed over the humanoid's chest, and across his waist was a metallic belt with a large, yellow six-pointed buckle star. Beneath the star was an insignia the outdoorsman couldn't quite identify.
Now, I can tell you it was probably most definitely a male because I saw the David Bowie bulge. Anyways, the visitor had no detectable ears, but his eyes were small and he lacked some brows. The dome of his skull was covered with crosshair, and it looked like though he had straw growing out of his head. Very similar to, oh shit, I don't want to sound racist or nothing, but kind of reminded me of an
Right.
Oriental, you know what I'm saying? He was definitely a man though, like in height and the bulge. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Anyways, I estimate that he stood maybe 6 feet tall, weighed about 180 pounds. This was definitely no ghost. Good Lord, his flesh and blood. Amen!
Now, we do need to note here that this was a story written back in the 70s, so we're gonna note that Oriental is no longer appropriate, but we are just quoting.
You know, why the fuck do you
'Cause I read
give
that
me?
too.
What the fuck do you give me the racist comments for? Like, Jesus Christ, man! Fuck.
One time, Press is trying to go down the straight and narrow, and I just set him up. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. I'm going to be even more unprofessional here. I got to go unlock the front door for my wife. I'll be right back.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. That was quick. Fuck, dude. You were just like ba-bam.
Yeah, so I think there's a storm outside because my dog's going crazy in the background. I have no idea why she's barking. I thought my wife was home, but
Oh, yeah,
Apparently
dude.
that's not it.
It's fucking ready to let loose. It's ready to grip and rip.
damn.
Which is
Well,
why we're
anyway-
probably having so many problems tonight with technology, because
Oh,
you know,
you're
this-
probably right, man.
this is an
Yeah.
internet show, and the weather's coming through, knocking out the signal. God damn it!
Or it's the Men in Black.
Yeah,
The humanoid's face. The humanoid's face was yellow, like it had jaundice. Oh my gosh, this is the most professional episode we've ever done. Hold on. Luna Pup, come here. There ain't no one there, baby. Come here. Well, there's nobody there. See, sweetie? There's no one there.
Mm-mm.
So we've got a wind chime that keeps knocking against one of the columns on the front porch, and she thinks it's somebody knocking on the door.
I'm gonna get him, Dad. I'm gonna get him.
All right, back to it, back to it. The humanoid's face was yellow like it had jaundice, and it had a lipless-like slit for a mouth that concealed 3 exceptionally large teeth at the top and the bottom. On the top, it had a pair of antennas, but weirdest of all, the face seemed to be blended directly into its neck, completely devoid of a chin.
Now, look, personally, I tell you, it takes some getting used to. In order for me to look at him without getting queasy and feeling like that feeling in the pit of my stomach, no chin was visible. Are you fucking kidding me? His face just seemed like it blended right into his throat. He had no jawbone. Shit, it looked like Lord Voldemort and Ant-Man fucked and had a baby, and I was looking right directly at this devilish abomination offspring thing. I tell you what, fuck no.
Its legs were of average length, but it was Luna, come here. Is that storm pretty bad, man? I haven't looked.
I don't know. It was fucking windy as shit and like hazy looking, like it was about to let loose hail, you know.
Hell balls.
Yeah.
Damn. That would explain why we are rife with problems tonight. Oh yeah, there's like the world's tiniest little thunderstorm just kind of drifting over us. Well, damn.
Surprise,
Damn. Well,
motherfuckers.
Sorry, guys, for everything going on in this episode.
Yeah, for those of you that listen to us on iTunes, this will all be edited out and you'll never know the difference. For all you livers, well, better luck next week. And if this is the first time you're tuning in don't judge us on this one episode. Go back and look at the last couple ones to know what you're really getting.
Yikes. I know. Ain't that the way, too, man? I love this story, and I was so stoked all day, and then it's just like, nope, technology took a giant shit on us. The being's legs were average in length, but it was bow-legged. And here's where things get kind of funky. The arms were a little longer than they should have been, but it was missing its left hand, like it just had a stump where a hand should have been. And where the right hand should have been, instead, was replaced by what looked almost like a drill bit appendage sticking straight out of the wrist. So this guy's got
like
one
Lockjaw
nub
off
and
of
one
He-Man. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yep. And at this point, the unearthly being slowly approached the bewildered Carl and did something that completely caught the hunter off guard. He asked him, "How you doing?" The bewildered hunter admitted that he was trying to stay calm when he weakly responded,
Well, man, I'm doing pretty fucking good now that you ask.
"Oh," he said. Okay, we'll roll with it. And then the strange being asked Higdon if he was hungry. But before Higdon could respond, the creature sent a small, clear cellophane package floating through the air towards him.
He was like a goddamn Jedi. He waved a pointed object where his right hand should have been, and then it levitated over to me. Shit, I opened up the package, found 4 pills inside. Kind of like in that Matrix movie. I didn't know if I should take the red pill, take the blue pill. But anyways, in English, he told me to take one of them, and it would last for 4 days. Now, normally, I don't like taking pills, not even an aspirin, but something happened. It was as if he had control over my action, so I just swallowed the goddamn thing and put the other 3 into my jacket pocket, and I kid you not, I had an erection that lasted longer than 4 hours.
If you have an erection that lasts more than 4 hours, call more ladies.
Yeah.
The strange humanoid, who I like to imagine looked a lot like Butthead from Beavis and Butthead, then introduced himself as Ausso One. It was at this point that Higdon noticed a strange box-like object catching the sun's rays and reflecting them back, sitting in a clearing behind the strange humanoid creature.
Man, look, there, not far from us was a transparent Q-shaped object thing resting on the ground, and it looked to me like a huge Christmas package, you know, flat on all sides like a box, but it didn't have like a bow on it or anything like that, so I don't know why I'm telling you it looked like a Christmas package, but basically, motherfuckers, it was a clear, translucent cube box thing laying in the middle of the forest. And I couldn't see landing gear or an entrance or anything like that. And it was much smaller than any other commercial or military planes because, you know, I am a fucking expert because I'm out in the woods hunting and everything. In fact, you could go on, you're going to think I'm crazy, but this thing could have been more than 5 feet high, 7 feet long, and 4.5 feet wide. Tiny, like a spacecraft for a midget is what I'm getting at. And that's about the only way I could think to describe it, to put it into terms. It was like a Christmas-shaped flying saucer UFO thing made for a midget. Definitely not this for this 6-foot-tall scallywag, you know, dumb-looking thing standing in front of me. You know what I'm saying?
Taking notice of Carl's curiosity of the craft, the being then asked the hunter, "Do you want to come along?" Higdon, still in full disbelief, just shrugged his shoulders in response. And suddenly...
Man, before I was able to move a muscle, I found myself inside this contraption. It was like instantaneous, like holy shit, I just transported just like Jesus. Boom! Right across the water. I was in this translucent cube Christmas box midget thing, and how was I able to fit inside? That's what I thought. And then they must have shrunk me down. Holy shit! I'm small! Damn, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but some alien shrunk my ass. And I wouldn't venture how they accomplished this feat, but this guy, this Ausso One, just pointed, and we were where he wanted us to be.
After Ausso One loaded his new Earth pal into his little box-like craft, Higdon's mind suddenly began to get fuzzy, like he'd been drinking a little too much, which made him start to panic.
Man, my memory fails me here. I feel like I had too much to drink, like I took one too many pulls of the hooch, if you know what I'm saying, and my hands were sweating. Man, somehow that pill this fella gave me must have dredged at least some of my senses. Otherwise, I'm positive I would have been crying and perhaps fainted. Anyways, I may be strong, but listen, fellers, I'm only human.
And then, curiously, Higdon glanced over to the other side of the craft and noticed that all 5 of the elk that he had just seen a few moments ago were also inside the being's cube-shaped craft, standing behind what he assumed to be an invisible barrier. Higdon was admittedly impressed with the being's ability to incapacitate the untamed animals.
I mean, look, I'm kind of fuzzy on how they managed to contain such wild beasts and shrink them down, smaller me, to get them in this 5x4x5, Christmas-shaped box. But, man, these son of a bitches did it, and these things look like they are paralyzed. I kid you not.
Then Carl noticed that the elk weren't the only things paralyzed, because at the exact same moment he saw the frozen animals, he became aware that he was now sitting in a high-backed bucket seat, with what he described as restrictive bands securing his arms and legs, making him unable to move.
And there we were. As we took off, I found myself strapped down to this seat with my hands held so fast to the armrest of the chair, my legs were bound, and my dick was out.
Wow. Fighting off the sudden sensation of panic, Carl watched in growing horror as a second, jawless, straw-haired being appeared out of nowhere. And together, this new being, assumedly Beavis, and the Ausso One also strapped a bizarre wire-clad, football helmet-like device on top of Carl's head.
Man, I felt like something bad was going to happen. I didn't know, but I felt like a monster in an old Frankenstein movie.
Higdon then observed a console with 3 dissimilar levers, which Ausso One was using to steer the craft. But strangely, the alien pointed the drill-shaped hand at the longest lever and seemed to move it telepathically. And the transparent cube that Higdon would later describe as a flying boxcar slowly lifted off the ground and hovered above Higdon's truck.
And then when we got above the trees, Ausso aimed his arm thingy at my pickup, and it disappeared. Poof! It vanished into thin fucking air.
As if the entire ordeal wasn't already quite outlandish enough, Higdon testified that just as suddenly as they left the Earth, he then spied an ominous, planet-shaped sphere, similar to a basketball, through the clear floor of the box-like craft. The planet he immediately knew was not Earth. The most memorable sight that Carl could recall from the impromptu tour was how obscene this alien world was. In the middle stood a colossal tower that loomed above the surface. He would later compare it to the Seattle Space Needle, but unlike the Earth-bound namesake, this huge umbrella-like structure was covered in rotating lights that were so bright and blinding they hurt his eyes to look at. The hunter was so overwhelmed by the sound that he compared to... the hunter was also overwhelmed by the sound of what he compared to be an electric razor buzzing.
So listen, all around us, this tower were revolving patterns of multicolored lights and bullshit, and not unlike powerful spotlights, they were so intense that it was actually painful to keep my eyes open. The lights were so brilliant that I had to hold my hands to my face as a protective shield, and I vaguely remember shouting, "Shit! Fuck! Turn them off! They're burning me, goddammit! I can't tolerate this shit!"
Rather than comforting their frightened guest, the second drill-handed humanoid merely commented that they had similar problems on Carl's homeworld, insisting, "Your sun burns us too." Then the odd craft landed about 150 feet away from a platform at the base of the tower, at which point the second being vanished just as quickly as he had showed up. Through the transparent walls of the craft, Carl saw what he claimed to be 5 human beings, all dressed in average Earth clothes, all talking to one another. The individuals consisted of one brown-haired girl who appeared to be around 11, a blonde girl who was just a few years older than a teen, and then a couple other teenagers who seemed to be about 17 or 18. Then the group was rounded off by a man who appeared to be in his 50s, none of which seemed to notice Carl exiting the craft. At this point, Ausso One, who had so cordially offered Higdon the food pills and a ride around the cosmos, didn't bother explaining the presence of the other humans, but instead patiently explained to the anxious oil man that they had touched down on a planet that was 163,000 light miles away from Earth. Now, Higdon made sure in his account to say that Ausso One didn't call them light years, but instead called them light miles. Because sorry, go ahead with your quote, sorry.
Because to them dumb motherfuckers, the passage of time is different than it is to us. Apparently they ain't got no Seiko watches, so they were just like, it's like being in a car, so we're going to call it light miles, you fucking alien. It's light years. Make space great
Also
again,
one-
alien motherfuckers.
I don't think he was this redneck or this angry. Ausso One escorted Carl into the dazzling tower. The pair then went up in an elevator, which deposited them into a room where they were instructed to stand on a small platform. Carl noted that he and the alien never actually walked anywhere, but instead, it seemed as though they were floating above the ground. While they were hovering towards the destination, Ausso One explained, "There are no fish on this planet, and those finned critters... There were no fish on this planet, and those finned critters were one of my people's favorite things about Earth." And at this point, an odd device that Higdon described resembling a glassy shield slipped out of the wall and paused in front of the human. The shield was evidently some kind of medical device and scanned Carl for almost 5 minutes before disappearing back into the wall. And here's where things get a little stranger. Higdon's extraterrestrial tour guide stood staring at him for a few minutes, and then, almost sadly in his comment, informed Carl that he was going to return him back to the spot they first met, because after the examination, they discovered that he was not quite, that he didn't suit our purpose.
Because he fucking probably
Carl
had, like,
never knew.
prostate cancer or some shit, and they're like, dude, get this fucking disease motherfucker out of here. Like, maybe, like, gonorrhea or chlamydia. They're like, dude, get fucked.
Right. Interesting you say that. Let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
Carl never knew what his potential nefarious purpose was, but he would later speculate that he thought it had to do with a breeding program. Ausso One then led the man back to the elevator and down the main door. With the same abruptness that he had felt earlier, Carl realized that he and his alien companion Ausso One were now back inside the cubicle sphere, cubicle craft. But this time, when he entered the ship, he saw all 5 elk were nowhere to be seen. So Carl walked into the room where they first set in the cube-shaped ship, and he looked over to see Ausso One admiring his hunting rifle. And again, with a sad-sounding voice, Ausso One said that he wanted to, though he couldn't, keep such a primitive weapon as a souvenir. So Ausso One then telepathically handed the rifle back to Carl, and then reached into Carl's pocket and removed the 3 remaining food pills he had hidden, which instantly bothered Carl because he knew this would be the only concrete evidence he had of the strange event. And once again, the alien pointed at the longest lever with his drill-shaped hand, and the cube-shaped vessel then jumped once again into hyperdrive. Higdon quickly realized that he was no longer hovering above an alien world, but that his alien comrade and his miraculous cube-shaped object were seemingly instantaneously transported back to Earth. He claimed he saw his truck, which now, oddly enough, had been transported about 5 miles away from the glade where it had been parked previously only 2.5 hours ago. The hunter later considered the situation.
Well, shit. You know what? Since I was in a state of mental stress, this fact did not have any impact on me till sometime later. I mean, I know that I could never have driven over this impossible terrain even if I'd been physically capable of driving, which I was most certainly not with a fucking 4-day-old hard on and, 4-day food pill shoved in my belly.
At this point, the kindly spaceman said to the Earthling again, sadly, "We'll see you."
No, the fuck? Whatever, you fucking liar. That's not how this... this guy got fucked is what happened. The fucking piece of shit aliens. I feel sorry for Carl. Dude, fucking justice for Carl. That's where I'm at.
Just... Carl was overwhelmed by a floating sensation, and without warning, he found himself standing on the edge of a steep, rocky slope. Suddenly, the stones loosened below his feet because they couldn't support his weight, and he found himself again plummeting down a 9-foot decline. I shouldn't say again. And he found himself suddenly plummeting down a 9-foot decline, severely impacting against the hard ground, and once he hit, he injured his head, neck, and shoulder. The next thing the bewildered father of 4 consciously recalled was staggering down a 3-mile dirt road, rifle in hand, now freezing in a state of hysterical amnesia.
Well, just like every Sunday after I've had too much hooch, I didn't know who the fuck I was, what had happened, where I was, and for that matter, the only thing I could think of was to get out of there as fast as I could and find someone who could help.
Higdon was in such a state of shock that he walked past his pickup truck without recognizing it. He even realized that he was utterly alone in the dirt road, that he backtracked back to the vehicle. There I stood shivering, eyes filled with tears, not knowing
Well, that's
my own
my part,
identity.
motherfucker.
Oh, sorry. I got distracted. Hold on a second. Shayla said it was out now hailing here in Wichita.
Yeah, told you.
So,
Told you it
if
looked
there's
like
any-
hail. Ooh, green glow in the sky. I know what that means. I'm a weatherman.
Yeah. You called it, man. You called it.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry.
Look, me, Carl, there I stood shivering, eyes filled with tears, not knowing my own identity. I saw a truck parked off the road between some trees, and I'm like, fuck, it doesn't look like my F-150. And I decided to crawl in it for shelter to keep me warm, and I didn't realize that, shit, this truck did belong to me. This was Bertha. This was my F-150. God damn it.
Huddled and trembling in shock, Higdon was startled by a feminine voice that suddenly crackled over the CB radio.
There was this two-way set under the dashboard, so I picked it up and I was like, breaker 10, breaker 10. Manners blurted out that I was sick and lost and desperately in need of some assistance, and when the voice on the other end asked me where I was, I told him I had seen a sign down the road which read Northern Bound National Forest. That didn't seem to be much help, however, and there was absolutely no indication as to what forest the sign was referring to. And then the lady said, "Candy cane," and then it crackled out.
Candy cane. A search party led by a local sheriff and accompanied by Higdon's wife Marjorie had a lot of difficulty navigating the backwoods paths with their 4-wheel drive vehicles and were unable to locate the panicky hunter until almost midnight. It was during this incredibly difficult trip that Higdon's wife and 2 other deputies claimed to have spied green, red, and white flashing lights in the sky, but they were too far away to discern what the true origin might have been. Later, though, it would come out that 2 residents of Rawlings, Wyoming, a gentleman named Don and his wife Marilyn, claimed to have observed an unusual radiance off in the sky near Medicine Bow Forest at the same exact time that the search group was making their way through trying to find Carl. Not long after, the baffled officers were astounded to find Carl's 2-wheel drive truck bumper deep in a mud-filled sinkhole off in the center of the forest ravine. that was nearly impenetrable by motor vehicles. In fact, the conditions were so bad the police were forced to make the final leg of the journey on foot. But even more perplexing was the fact that there were no tire tracks leading into the bog. So the sheriff and his men couldn't comprehend just how exactly Carl's truck managed to get stuck deep into the forest.
Man, I feel so
Judging from the
bad for this
circumstance-
guy. Like, these aliens just basically just fucked him. They're like, dude,
Yeah.
we scanned you, you're fucking trash. Like, you know what? We prefer these 5 elk over your dumb redneck ass. Like, these elk are basically genetically superior to your dumb white ass. Fuck you, Carl. We're putting your car in a bog, motherfucker. Figure this shit out, bitch. Fucking justice for Carl. Dude, I'm still there.
Justice.
Like, justice for Carl.
We should make shirts. I'll draw this creep and we'll put him on a shirt with hashtag justice for Carl.
For Carl.
Judging by the evidence they had of the bizarre circumstance, the sheriff and the rest of the crew believe the truck would have almost had to have been dropped from above the tree line to get it rationally where it had landed. Or where they had discovered it. But as if things weren't bizarre enough, when they finally managed to pry the still terrified Higdon from his truck, he started screaming.
Man, that one-armed motherfucker took my elk, sons of bitches.
He even failed to recognize his own wife due to his hysteria. Deputies quickly packed the hunter and his wife into one of their vehicles, while the rest of the police were still trying to figure out just how the heck his truck ended up in the middle of a sinkhole. Eventually, they created a sort of bridge with fallen trees and finally managed to tow the truck from the shallow ravine back down the dirt road, which they still thought was impossible to navigate with a 2-wheel drive vehicle.
Should have got a 4x4, Carl. Should have got a 4x4. Anyways, using towing equipment, I was hauled out. They immediately took me to the nearest hospital where I was placed under a day and night observation. And not until the following evening did I begin to regain my memory and start to recall the few details of my ordeal.
Sheriff's deputies wasted no time in transporting the frantic hunter and his wife back to the Carbon County Memorial Hospital in Rawlings, where they were admitted around 2:30 a.m. The doctor on staff noticed that Carl's eyes were extremely bloodshot, and he seemed to be suffering from a nervous exhaustion, not to mention the injuries he sustained during his fall down the 9-foot gully. After an extensive series of medical tests, the doctors noticed that despite Carl's clearly injured and anxious condition, oddly his blood was extremely nutrient-rich, with vitamins and other nutrients. Even more peculiar, though, was the fact that back in 1958, Carl had been hospitalized after he came into contact with tuberculosis, and at the time, X-rays showed a significant amount of scarring in his lungs. But be that as it may, the X-rays taken on this evening, following his presumably intergalactic expedition, showed no scar tissue on his lungs, and the doctor, one R.C. Tongo, even noted that some painful kidney stones that he'd been treating Carl for were no longer evident. The mystified doctor said he's now in A1 super condition. Despite his new and improved organs, though, a still petrified oil man remained incoherent throughout the night, and according to most reports, didn't manage to reclaim memories until the following day when his daughters came to visit him. It was then and only then he regaled to his wife, a room full of doctors and police, his harrowing run-in with the intergalactic Ausso One, and also his unnamed co-pilot, aka Beavis and Butthead. During their journey to another world, while it's so difficult to imagine that this actually happened, that he actually explained this to a kept audience, consisting of both loved ones and authority figures. Cut that part out. Marjorie, however, claimed that she never once doubted the sincerity of her husband's strange tale. Later, telling reporters from the Star Tribune I believed him because it was him, and because I was out there and I saw lots of different things that went on that night. And all those innards showed a marked upgrading. Higdon's appetite didn't return for 4 days. A
She's like
fact
that wife
possibly
off
attributed.
of Men in Black. Yeah, he's like he was wearing a Carl suit. He drank some sugar water.
Sugar and water. Although his innards showed a marked upgrading, Carl's appetite didn't return for 4 days, possibly attributed to Ausso's miraculous food pills. But he grumbled about sharp pains at the base of his skull and neck, and he claimed that he felt as though his body were treated like an accordion. Oh, sorry, that's your quote there, buddy. I forgot to highlight that one.
Oh, son of a bitch. Man, I feel like I was like push and pull like an accordion, like I was a piece of spaghetti going through a black hole, and those motherfuckers were just pulling me apart like a limp noodle. That's just the way my muscles felt.
Oh, sorry. I cut you off.
That's fine.
After 3 days of observation, the swiftly recovered outdoorsman was released from the hospital and back into the care of his wife and family. Within days of her husband's hospitalization, Marjorie discovered the crushed 7mm bullet hidden in her husband's canteen patch. Carl was still at a loss as to how to explain the force which had managed to so thoroughly damage his bullet, so he took the casing to the sheriff's office.
I had never seen anything like it before, so I ain't have nothing to compare it to. As soon as I could take it to the Carbon County Sheriff's Department, where the officer in charge of ballistic analyzed and examined it through the microscope thingy, he told me it was from a 7mm Magnum rifle, which is the caliber of my gun. No shit. Anyways, returning to the chunk of metal, he noted that he had never seen a bullet in that shape or condition.
So the sheriff inspected the warped bullet and claimed he had never seen anything quite like it. He was convinced that it was impossible to hammer the bullet into the existing shape and felt the bullet had probably not hit a solid object like a tree or a rock. The copper jacket had been turned inside.
Carl. It's fucking
Right.
force field.
The copper jacket had been turned inside out practically, and the lead slug was missing. Later, the doctor would write that it looked like it had been turned inside out by a superhuman being. The Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, or APRO, sent a consultant named Dr. Walker to inspect the jacket, and after a rigorous examination of the object, he testified it had to have collided with an exceptionally solid surface with immense force. This assertion is not to be underestimated, as a 7mm bullet would have had to have been high, nearly impossible to track. I don't know bullet speak. The assertion is not to be underestimated, as the 7mm bullet travels at such a fantastic rate of speed. It would have had to have been well impossible to track with the casing. Jesus H. Christ. This assertion is not to be underestimated, as a 7mm bullet travels at such a fantastic rate of speed. It would have been impossible to track the casing down had it not hit something incredibly hard, much harder than a rock or a tree.
Fucking
They tried to
force
locate the
field.
bullet. They tried to track down the bullet, of course, but never could, meaning the lead. Higdon was later placed under hypnosis and was able to recall his trip to Ausso One's home world in minute detail. He also revealed to all those observing the session that the straw-headed alien and his kin were searching for food and used Earth as sort of a game preservation where they could come to hunt and fish. They also wore their black skin-tight suits to protect them from the rays of our sun, and they brought the elk back to their planet for breeding purposes. But whether Ausso One was referring to a program that made But whether Ausso One was referring to a program to preserve game like that on his home planet or some kind of slaughterhouse was never to be known. According to Higdon, breeding was also the reason why human beings were brought to the alien world, and Higdon was under the impression that the aliens had harvested these primarily young humans in order to use them in some kind of propagation program, and he didn't suit their purposes because, in fact, back in 1965, he had undergone a vasectomy.
Oh shit, he didn't have the juice.
Didn't have the juice, man.
Couldn't make the babies.
Didn't have
But
no pocket
you know what?
gravy.
Fuck these aliens. Because if you can scan this guy and take all the kidney stones out of his kidneys and like make his lungs not black and charred, you can put the baby making crap back in there. I mean, our scientists and doctors. I mean, I'm just saying, greatest scientists in the world. They can reverse the vasectomy. What the fuck is your problem, aliens? Make space great again, motherfuckers. Try that for a change. Anyways,
Higdon
maybe the
claimed-
fact that I
sorry.
didn't have the baby making juice. This is what that's why they meant when they said that I wasn't any good, because they wanted somebody who could fuck, and it wasn't me. I couldn't do it. I was
Higdon
shooting
claimed
blank,
that for
boys. I was shooting blanks.
Salmon don't swim upstream. Higdon claimed that for weeks following the trip, he was followed by a colossal green light floating through the sky. Some ufologists speculate that this could have been the extraterrestrials keeping watch on Carl, much like modern scientists tracked tagged bears. 4 years later, in September of 1978, Higdon was subjected to what was then one of the most advanced polygraph tests available, the PSE, Psychological Stress Evaluator. The test was presided over by a technical consultant for the LAPD, Dr. Greenberg, and his colleague, Dr. Sidney Walter. The scientists ascertained the former hunter was giving a truthful account of what happened, and Dr. Greenberg concluded, "I'm forced to admit that something utterly fantastic did indeed happen to this man. The test proves without a doubt." The oil drillers... the oil man has maintained the veracity of this story throughout its entire life, and is the first to admit that his trip was difficult to swallow even for him.
Look, I like to think it was just a nightmare. Maybe I took too much mushrooms out on the forest, maybe took some acid, drank too much hooch. I've tried to shake my mind clear of the thoughts pertaining to what took place, but frankly, that's totally out of the question at this point. I was fucking sober as shit when this happened, so I'm here to tell you folks that I remain apprehensive over the events of last October, and I firmly believe that the American public is brave enough to accept the truths of such matters. And of course, I wish the whole episode hadn't occurred, but since it did, I don't see any reason to keep it a secret. Some folks may think I've gone off my rocker, but anyone who knows me can tell you I'm not making any of this up. People seem to accept it now, and I'm being as truthful as I can be. This all really happened.
So it's hard to tell whether or not this all really happened, or it was just one creative ruse made up by a hunter trying to get some kind of publicity. I think, personally, I want to believe that it happened. You know, it's kind of a bizarre story, and of course, back then in the 70s, you're still in that camp of like, I'm not talking about little green men, because I don't want to come off as cuckoo-cuckoo, you know? But you have to admit, none of this probably would have ever happened had he not stopped to help those two fateful motorists who were stranded on the side of the highway with a broken down van. So were they in on the ruse, or was
Yeah,
it
dude,
just
that was
one
fucking
huge
that was
coincidence?
Beavis and Butthead in disguise. Dude, they
What
put on
if it
their
was?
they put on their human face and were just like, "Surprise, motherfucker! We know the best spot to go to."
Yeah, why not go up to Broken Bow Canyon?
Shit.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, otherwise, I think this is a pretty solid episode despite all those technological difficulties we had.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Man
It was
alive.
fun.
Had
I
we
mean,
just
fuck you for
knew-
giving me all those speaking parts, because that's been a hot second. Like, Jesus.
You did great. Next time
Yeah.
I'll send you the document the day before we record.
Yeah.
Well, guys, like Preston said, normally we don't have this many kind of, issues recording and streaming on YouTube, but thanks for joining us anyway. And if you're on the social medias, please give us a follow on Instagram at PXL Paranormal. If you're on Facebook, we are the Pixelated Paranormal Podcast. Preston, I think, did we break 250 on YouTube?
Fuck yeah, we did, dude. 251. 251,
Very,
dog.
very nice. I want to give a big shout out to Tony and also our buddy Cody. Cody's out there on the highways doing the damn thing, and he was our 250th subscriber, I do believe. So,
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, buddy. All right, man. What do you got for Dobbs?
Look, listeners, I want to tell you what the moral of tonight's story is. See, Carl was a scuzzy redneck. There's no way around that. Carl got rejected. Those aliens scanned him, and they're like, his kidneys are fucked. He ain't got the baby-making juice. His lungs, fucking smokes like 7 packs a day. And then they got up to the old face, and they're like,
tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis, whatever. The whole point is they got up and they scanned his face, and you know what they realized? That this motherfucker is dirty. You know what? Had Carl had a little bit of Dobbs in his face, they would have been like, dude, let's fix this baby-making juice up. This man is here to fuck. They would have smelt that bay rum. They would have smelt that fresh citrus mint classic tobacco. That beard would have been glistening. It just would have been, kind of probably would have looked like mine. I do imagine, it's nice and soft and curly. And they would have been like, whoa, boy, this is the best human beard we've ever seen. And they're like, is that Dobbs? Fuck yeah, it's Dobbs. This is our man. But you know what? Carl didn't have Dobbs. He didn't go to BigDobbsBeardBomb.com. Carl didn't use code PXLPARA for 20% off his order. I'm probably, now that I've said all this, going to revert hashtag Justice for Carl, because Carl, you should have followed the advice of your boys and should have gone to Dobbs. So, semi-justice for Carl. Go to Dobbs, use the code. You're going to look good, you're going to smell good, you're going to feel good. You're going to have the best damn beard you can have. That's the point that I was trying to get at.
Fair enough.
Woo!
Fair enough. Well, I can appreciate that. How do you follow that up? If you're in the Wichita area, please stop by and see our dear friend Leslie and the rest of the gang at CD Trade Post, Pawnee, and Seneca. All right, buddy boy. Well, shall we go ahead and sign off and sign out then? You got anything else to add?
No, we should probably get out of here before this whole fucking thing just crashes and implodes or something. I don't trust.
Yeah.
I don't trust how it's going tonight. So, do your thing.
Yeah.
I'll do my thing. We'll piece the fuck out.
Sounds good. All right, folks. Until next time, I cheers you with this glass of water and say cheers for the weird shit in the world and those of us that love to talk about it.
And stay spooky and stay on the paranormal highway.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. Email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.